Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, supporters of Forest, thank you so much for being here. It feels like a birthday party, and it really is, albeit one for an institution younger than most of us here tonight. To whet your appetite, over the next hour or so, we have loads of excitement to mark Forest's 40th anniversary, with one or two emotive presentations, an eminently intellectual toast, two short, brilliant speeches by Mark Littlewood and Claire Fox, and last but not least, a set from one of the UK's leading, up-and-standing comedians, the soon-to-be legendary Jeff Norgate. Now it is my great and immense pleasure to invite our hostess with the mostess, albeit he's a great man, my great friend and our great leader. Please give a warm hand of applause for Mr. Simon Clark.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm afraid this is going to go on for a while, so I hope you've already had your comfort break. Anyway, thank you very much to Ranald, who's been a very generous host to us over many, many years. I'd also like to thank the staff at Boisdale for looking after us this evening. Special thanks to Tony and the restaurant team, to events manager Nicole Graham, to head chef Andrew and the kitchen brigade. Now, it's been my great pleasure to be the non-smoking director of Forest for 20 of our 40 years. Now, smokers must be one of the most vilified minorities in the country, and I'm proud to be involved in this small but important battle against the overbearing nanny state and the ghastly anti-smoking zealots. Founded in 1979 by Sir Christopher Foxley Norris, a former Battle of Britain fighter pilot and a lifelong pipe smoker, much of Forest's work is media-related. Over 4 decades, we've been quoted tens of thousands of times and given thousands of TV and radio interviews. When we're not responding to the latest anti-smoking initiatives, we are writing or commissioning our own reports, contributing to government consultations, or appearing before parliamentary committees. So I'd like to thank everyone who has worked for Forest from 1979 to the present day. It's a long list, so it's unfair to single anyone out, but I would like to mention a few people who are here tonight and who work for Forest. Jackie Delbert first worked for Forest in 2004 when she worked in our campaign against the smoking ban. Photographer Dan Donovan first worked for Forest in 2007. Dan is not only our official photographer, he also designs and produces most of our campaign tools, one of which is this photojournal, which you should all have a copy of. They're on your place settings. Do please take this home. They're to be taken away. You can chuck them in the bin when you get home, but I hope you'll keep this as a little keepsake of this evening. It's got lots of photographs of events and campaign launches that we've done over the last 15 years. And the picture of David Hockney on the cover was actually taken in Brighton when David Hockney came to support us in 2005. But I'll talk about that in just a minute. I also want to thank Angela Harbert, who ran Forest Hands Off Our Packs campaign. That campaign raised over 260,000 signatures via a street petition and delivered 50,000 letters to Downing Street. It won't surprise you to know the government ignored them all. John Mallon, he's over here from Dublin, in fact from Cork, over here from Ireland today. Round of applause for John Mallon. He is our spokesman in Ireland where I have to say the political and media environment is even more hostile to smokers than here in the UK, so John does a great job for us over there. Also, welcome tonight to Guillaume Périgord, who, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, is our man in Brussels. Yes, we do have a man in Brussels. He fights a good fight on behalf of tens of millions of smokers throughout the European Union, so somebody has to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, give all those people a round of applause. Thank you. Now, I'm sorry if this sounds like an Oscar acceptance speech, but I have a lot of people to thank. And I'd like to thank everyone who's attended a Forest event, whether it's a dinner like this, a drinks reception, a book launch, a campaign launch, a panel discussion, or a party conference event. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, he's not here tonight. We invited him, but he's currently working in France, Normandy, I believe, painting. And that, of course, is David Hockney, who's often described as Britain's greatest living artist. Now, the first Forest event David attended was a private dinner at Boisdale of Bishopsgate in 2004. And he enjoyed the evening so much, he later said it was a life-affirming moment. And in fact, he enjoyed it so much in 2005, he joined us, as I said, in Brighton, where we were hosting an event at the Labour Party conference to protest against the Labour government's plan to ban smoking in all indoor public places. Now, I have to say, that day with Hockney and with others was by far the best day of my working life. And it still makes me laugh to think about it, because David began the day on BBC Breakfast and the Today programme, and he ended it giving an interview to the Sunday Times over dinner in Brighton. And the hours in between, he was interviewed by every broadsheet newspaper and by Andrew Neil for the BBC. He spoke at the Forest event, and he even found time to take part in a photo op we had organised that went slightly awry when it was invaded by an anti-tobacco campaigner who stood next to him holding a banner that read, "Ban Tobacco." Now, alongside him, David stood smoking and holding a piece of paper that read, "Death awaits you even if you do not smoke." And there's a rather good picture, again, in this photojournal of the anti-tobacco campaigner standing alongside David in that Brighton hotel. So do have a look at it, it's quite amusing. One of the other people who was in Brighton with us that day was the musician Joe Jackson, and he has sent us this message to pass on to you, and Ranald's going to read it out.
This is the letter from Joe, not spoken in his voice. 40 years ago, we could not have imagined what monsters and nanny state and public health racket would turn into. We need forests more than ever. In fact, we need 50, 100 forests. Keep it up and don't let the bastards grind you down.
Now, I would also like to thank our non-executive directors, Russell Lewis and John Burton, who are both here tonight. And I'd also like to remember Lord Harris of High Cross. Ralph Harris was chairman of Forest from 1987 until his death in 2006. He was better known as one of the founders of the Institute of Economic Affairs, which was his first love. But he was a huge help to Forest and to me personally. I valued not only his advice, but his unwavering optimism, which is a fantastic quality to have. Now, Ralph will never be forgotten either by Forest or the IEA. Thank you too to the members of Parliament who have consistently opposed excessive regulations on tobacco and other products such as sugary food and drink. A number of MPs are here tonight, and looking ahead, I think we'll need your help and support even more. Smoking is increasingly being prohibited in outdoor public places. Some campaigners are calling for smoking to be banned in social housing. Next year, menthol cigarettes will be banned. In the UK, anti-smoking campaigners want to restrict the prevalence of shops that sell tobacco. Beverly Hills in California has just become the first town in the United States to outlaw all tobacco sales in shops. There is talk of health warnings on individual cigarettes, And it's even been suggested that when you open a pack of cigarettes, you should be forced to listen to an audio health warning. The anti-tobacco template is, of course, being rolled out for alcohol and sugary foods and drinks, and it will inevitably be used to restrict the use and sale of e-cigarettes, because the long-term goal of tobacco control campaigners is not a smoke-free world, but a nicotine-free world. Now, finally, in this section of the evening, I'd like to thank the tobacco companies who have supported Forest for 40 years. I'm very pleased that there are many people from the tobacco industry here tonight, not just current employees, but also people who've worked for the industry in the past. And it's very nice to see some faces that I very much enjoyed working with in the past. And what I want to say, though, is that we don't take the tobacco companies' support for granted, and we know that society's relationship with smoking has changed and will continue to change. And we also know that the companies are changing and moving towards safer nicotine products, as indeed they should. Now, Forest's focus is also evolving to embrace and support risk reduction products. But as long as there are adults who choose to smoke, enjoy smoking, and don't want to quit, we will never abandon them, because it's our belief that choice and personal responsibility are paramount. Now, I'll finish for the moment by inviting Ranald to read out a second message, and it's from Alexander Worr, grandson of Evelyn Worr and son of Oprah Worr. Now, Bron was another great supporter of Forest, and when I joined Forest, it was a huge thrill to meet him, because I grew up reading his columns in The Spectator and Private Eye in the 70s. Bron was very charming, and he managed to persuade me that Forest should sponsor a series of drinks parties at his academy club in a small, almost Dickensian room in Soho. Now, I'm not too sure who benefited most from those parties, but I did meet some very interesting people at those soirees, including several people who are here tonight. Mick Hume, you can give a wave, Mick. The great Tom Utley. I met Tom at one of Open War's soirees. Tom's here tonight. And of course, I also met Claire Fox, who's speaking a bit later. Now, Bron died in 2001, but last week Alexander, his son, sent us this message, and he asked us to read it out loud and proud.
We're reading it loud. Wishing your organisation all happiness and prosperity and ultimate success against the tyrannies of nanny statism. With all warmest salutations for your 40th anniversary, Viva Forest.
Thank you to Alexander Worr, and thank you, Ranald. You can go back and start drinking again. Right, we're moving on to the toast. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't actually had anything to drink for 15 or 20 minutes, so I do need one. So I'm delighted to welcome to the stage someone I've known for almost 40 years. He's the co-founder and president of one of the world's leading free market think tanks, and according to a recent poll, one of the few think tanks people have actually heard of. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Dr Madsen Pirie.
Thank you so much. Look, Forest is 40 years old, even older than Simon Clarke. It has fought the good fight for freedom, and we celebrate that tonight. It's the freedom to make our own decisions. Yes, some of them, like smoking, have risks, but so does riding a bicycle, and so does being a teenager on the streets of London. I knew Kingsley Amis. He smoked and drank heavily. He famously said, "There are no pleasures in this life worth giving up for 2 more years in a care home in Weston-super-Mare." Now, he died aged He died aged 73 without having spent a single day in Weston-super-Mare waiting for the hearse to arrive every day to take away the latest victim. There's another birthday today. George Orwell was born on June 26, 1903. He smoked heavily. He rolled his own from thick black shag tobacco. He didn't drink heavily, but nobody's perfect. He died young, but it was of TB, not of cancer. And that was after he wrote Animal Farm in 1984, the two best pro-freedom books ever written, opposing totalitarian dictatorship. And he reminds us that the quality of life is not measured in years. It's measured in achievement and enjoyment. Orwell celebrated freedom, as we do tonight. We denounce nannyism and the public health tyrants who want to make us live life their way. No thanks. We choose to live our own lives. So I ask you all to raise your glasses, please, ladies and gentlemen, and toast the freedom that Forrest has fought for. Here's to freedom, here's to Forrest.
Thank you, Madsen. A round of applause for Madsen Pirie. Thank you. Right, now we're going to do a few presentations. We're going to speed through them as quickly as possible. And our first presentation goes to someone who worked for Forrest way back in the 90s. He was Forrest's spokesman in Scotland, and since he stepped down 20 years ago, he's had a remarkable, occasionally controversial career. In that time, he spent 7 years as a Conservative member of the Scottish Parliament and many more years as a columnist for the Scotsman and the Edinburgh Evening News. He's written 2 reports for Forrest in that time, The Bully State in 2008 and McNanny State in 2018. But, ladies and gentlemen, who could have predicted his latest career move? Well, please welcome a former Forrest spokesman for Forrest in Scotland, and now, ladies and gentlemen, the new MEP for the North East of England, Mr. Brian Monteith.
What I'd love to say is that Forrest has been to me an inspiration because it has not just thought of itself as many single issue campaigns do. It has thought of the broader picture. And the difficulty it has had is that many organisations have not joined to recognise that as smokers have been made pariahs, so too have people who have sought to enjoy tobacco, enjoy alcohol, enjoy the freedoms of actually being gourmands like myself. So let's rejoice in the fact that Forrest doesn't just push the freedom to smoke tobacco, it pushes the freedom to enjoy life itself. That's what Forrest's about. So thank you, Simon. Thank you for what you've done, because what you have made sure is that the smokers still have a voice in a time when big corporates are all the time compromising and ensuring with politicians, of which I'm certainly against, that politicians will remove our freedoms. We have to fight to continue to make sure the individual remains superior over the collective. That's what Forrest is about. Thank you. Oh, there's a goodie bag. Oh, thank you.
Right, our next presentation is going to someone most of you will recognise instantly. I can't tell you how difficult it is to persuade any celebrity to oppose anti-smoking legislation, even if they themselves enjoy smoking. Now, it's a controversial issue, I do get that, obviously, which is why I have the utmost respect for anyone who sticks their head above the parapet. And our next presentation goes to someone who did far more than that. Before and after the introduction of the smoking ban, no celebrity threw themselves into battle more often or with more grace than TV chef and publican Mr. Antony Worrall Thompson. And while Antony's coming to the stage, I'll just tell you one anecdote. I was listening to the radio late at night. It was Radio 5 Live, I think, and they were talking about smoking. And suddenly on the radio, Antony comes on, and he'd actually been driving home. He pulled into a lay-by, phoned up 5 Live, and demanded to go on air. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is commitment.
Thank you very much. I haven't prepared anything because I didn't have a clue that this was going to happen. All I want to say is, fuck 'em. We are all about freedom of choice. Life would be so boring if we stuck to the law. I've been known to break the law on many occasions, and I don't see myself changing. But I want you to all know that whatever our next campaign is going to be, I'll be behind it, because it is all about freedom of choice. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Antony, and thank you for going off the message there. That media training course went well, didn't it? Now, our next presentation is going to someone, our next recipient. He's worked for us since 2007, I mentioned him a bit earlier. Now, he tells me he values being part of Forest because it's become a network of friends who are not embarrassed or ashamed because they choose to smoke. As well as being the official photographer at most of our events, he designs most of our campaign tools, including all our reports. He films our campaign videos, and his most recent work was the photojournal I showed you a bit earlier on. So, ladies and gentlemen, assuming he hasn't gone outside for a smoke, please put your hands together for Mr. Dan Donovan.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As I've seen many eloquent people stand here and speak, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan, and we really appreciate all the work that you do for us. Presentation, the next one goes to someone who's made a huge impression when she worked on Forest's Hands Off Our Packs campaign. Our campaign against plain packaging of tobacco was launched in March 2012 and was probably our most successful campaign ever. Yes, we ultimately lost that battle, but over 3 years we put up a hell of a fight that included a street petition signed by over 250,000 people and 50,000 letters to 10 Downing Street. And we couldn't have done it without the work of the wonderful, the dynamic Angela Harbert.
Thank you, Simon. Bless you. I will kill you later. I preloaded a mog, so I'm going to say this. Fuck them twice and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, the good thing about that is that we've sped through these presentations rather quickly. The final presentation was going to be to Ranald, but he's pissed off back to his seat and is drinking, so we'll give that to him behind the scenes a little bit later on. So we're going to go straight to our first speaker, and it's someone I can't speak highly enough of. Whenever he goes on a holiday to Europe, he comes back with one, if not two suitcases, literally stuffed with cigarettes, literally thousands of them, all for his own personal use. When he's not smoking, and he writes a regular column for The Times, he's also a regular guest on programmes such as Question Time, Newsnight, Sky News and the Today programme. He is, of course, the Director General of one of our finest think tanks, and which I understand will soon be running the country, according to some reports. Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted he's here tonight, so please welcome to the stage Mr. Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs.
Simon, thank you so much. 40. Wow. In 1932, the American psychologist Walter Pitkin published the self-help book, Life Begins at 40. Pitkin stated confidently, life begins at 40. This is the revolutionary outcome of our new era. Today it is half a truth. Tomorrow it will be an axiom. What a total load of bollocks. By the age of 40, you ache. You may be smarter from the knocks you've taken, but you're not fitter, you're not leaner, especially if you drink and smoke as much as I do. But you are probably better equipped to deal with the challenges and tasks that you then face. And I think that is true of Forrest today. In 1979, when Forrest was born, it was more of a kind of live fast, die young sort of culture. We don't really have that today. I wear a Fitbit that sort of measures my heart rate and tells me what to eat. I can remember when I turned 40, I decided I had to go for a medical and plug into this health application program. How much do you smoke? How much do you drink? Do you have 5 a day? Which I thought was a cigarette measurement. I didn't know that was about fruit and veg. How much exercise do you take? And then it's supposed to pump out your life expectancy. How many years are you likely to live to? So I did that when I was 40, and it told me I was likely to live to the age of 36. I can just about remember 1979. I was 7. I was seriously considering taking up smoking, but I'm a bit of a lazy bastard, so it took me 9 years to get round to it. But I think we sometimes look back on that era with rose-tinted spectacles. Things were different then, for sure. The average house price in the United Kingdom in 1979 was £13,000. Affordable, for sure, but the average salary was only £5,700. On the political stage, things were bleak and uncertain, plus that change. We had just gone through the winter of discontent, and in the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher had just become Prime Minister and was beginning to piece the country back together. In cultural terms, things were truly, truly grim. Sport was awful. Argentina were the reigning World Cup champions after cheating their way to the trophy. England had actually even failed to qualify for that tournament. Domestically in football, Liverpool in 1979 were Football League champions. The last time that happened, as far as I can remember. The music scene was a disgrace. Do any of you know what the best-selling single was in the UK in 1979? Well, it's a pretty poor single, but I have to say in 1979 it was prescient. The lyrics actually predicted the smoking ban. Go, just go, walk out the door. Don't turn around now, you're not welcome anymore. A terrible and corny song, but I rather like the title of it, I Will Survive, particularly as a 20-a-day smoker. Most popular movie in the United Kingdom in 1979 at the box office?
Life of Brian.
In 2019, and for several years, we have had Project Fear. Back then, however, it was Apocalypse Now. No messing around with getting kids to play truant and declare a climate emergency back then. No, apocalypse now. Things were pretty bad in the United States of America too. Jimmy Carter was still president. His challenger was a Hollywood B-movie actor. Ronald Reagan was tested in an interview about how much he knew about economics. Did he know anything at all? And he said, I do. A recession is when your neighbour loses his job. A depression is when you lose your job. And a recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his job. Truly, Reagan should have been the Director General of the IEA if he didn't have other things to occupy him. And of course came up with that brilliant libertarian phrase about the 9 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But what of forest? What are the rights of smokers? How have things changed for this crusade and this movement since 1979? By a show of hands in this room, how many of you smoke cigarettes? That is pathetic. In 1979, 40% of adults smoke. But let me put it another way. How many of you don't smoke cigarettes? That, ladies and gentlemen, is tax avoidance. How many of you used to smoke cigarettes but no longer smoke cigarettes? That is aggressive tax avoidance. But are we defeated? Are we losing? Are we going to continue to lose? Because it seems like inch by inch we keep losing. Now, our great leader, Simon Clarke, for 20 years has held this torch of freedom. And he's a very sanguine, impressive chap. As a Dundee United supporter, he is used to every week seeing seemingly insuperable odds and failing to overcome them. But he shrugs his shoulders, he moves on, he's sanguine about it. He's interested, I think, in winning the war, not just the battle. And we have lost some battles. You mentioned, Simon, plain packaging. We have the ban on smoking in public places. We've had the advertising and marketing bans. We've had higher and higher taxes placed. But you know what? I think we may be losing some battles, but I think we could win the war. I think the nannying, controlling health lobby have won some battles, but at great cost. I think their victories could be Pyrrhic. The term Pyrrhic victory alludes to King Pyrrhus from AD 279. He lost the best of his officers and many of his troops, even though he supposedly won a battle. Another such victory, he said, and we are lost. And I think this will eventually happen to the public state nannies. They are winning battles, but I think Forest will win the war. So it may feel like 40 years of hurt, but that never stopped me dreaming. Freedom is coming home. 40 isn't when life begins, but it's an important marker. The great 19th century German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, I think summed it up brilliantly. The first 40 years of life give us the text. The next 30 supply the commentary. Thank you, Forrest, for 40 years of fighting for our rights. Thank you, Simon, for your 2 decades of leadership of this organisation. Fellow smokers, lovers of freedom, let's not worry about the tactical battles we may have lost. Let's make sure in 2059, when we come together again here to celebrate 80 years of Forrest and 60 years of Simon at the helm, that we are able to light up, drink up, and reflect that the battle for freedom has been won. Have a very good evening.
Thank you, Mark Littlewood. Well, in fact, the first time I met our second and final speaker was at Oban Wars Academy Club in 2001. She was a smoker then, she's a smoker now. She's spoken at Forest events in London, Birmingham, Bournemouth, Brighton, Dublin, and even Brussels. She founded the Academy of Ideas and the annual Battle of Ideas Festival. She's been a regular panellist on Radio 4's Moral Maze for many years, and she appears regularly on Sky News, Politics Live, Any Questions, and many other flagship political programmes. She recently took on her biggest ever challenge and emerged as a member of the European Parliament for the North West of England, representing the Brexit Party. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your politics aside and welcome to the stage the indefatigable, I can't even say it, Claire Fox.
So you all know I've recently been elected as an MEP. No, that's not, we don't want any of that. Right, so I've only been on one very short visit to Brussels so far, and I was absolutely shocked, I tell you. Because I discovered a really startling, murky, dirty secret right at the heart of the European Parliament that I just couldn't believe. A really unpleasant sort of stench reeking into the atmosphere. What was it? There's smoking rooms on every floor. I just couldn't get over that there I was at the European Parliament and then they've got indoor smoking. I thought, how sensible, how civilised, how humane. Well done, European Parliament, to understand the importance of facilities for people at work, for MEPs and for endless staff and for comfort when you've got so much to do. Don't worry, I haven't gone native, and I do understand the hypocrisy when the EU Commission has led the way in outlawing smoking in bars, restaurants and cafes across Europe. But it was a salutary reminder that not every illiberal interpretation of such diktats in this country is the EU's fault. It's our own politicians here in the UK that are accountable to us, whether we're Remainers or Leavers, who have been overly zealous in enforcing the most illiberal and inhumane rules on smoking in this country. You can't blame the EU for everything. They have banned at great human cost smoking in prisons, smoking in psychiatric hospitals. Absolutely disgusting and disgraceful way to treat people. They give no leeway and exhibit total intransigence in terms of smoking anywhere indoors. And even those great facilities of the indoor smoking booths in European Parliament are not afforded to any establishment in this country. And increasingly, as you know, we're not even permitted to smoke in many parts of the outside world as well. So we have to own this, not Brussels, but we and Westminster, and it's our job to do something about it. Of course, the smoking ban always was undemocratic. Prior to passing the legislation, the Office for National Statistics found that 68% opposed a total ban, and Labour, in its general election manifesto in 2005, promised to ban smoking only in places serving food. Well, we all know what manifestos mean, don't we? So in the end, it was only the opinions of the lawmakers who were listened to, and the medical authorities and the lobby groups and the public health experts. Anything that was promised in a manifesto or demanded by the public was ignored. And I think it was a sign of things to come. A real symbol for us, a real revelation to us of a technocratic, anti-democratic elite cut off from everyday life, getting on with what they wanted to do, regardless of the cost for human people, society. But look, now I have joined a technocratic parliament, so maybe I'll become one of them. And it is a bit bonkers being an MEP, I have to say. And one of the things that I noticed was that my fellow MEPs have been absolutely shocked at the opprobrium levelled at them for daring to take a stand in relation to the EU question. They've been horrified at the abuse levelled at them as Brexit Party MEPs and as Leave voters. They've been called ignorant and easily swayed and stupid for ignoring the evidence from economic experts and so on. They've been shunned by polite society, treated as social pariahs. Of course, it was all war off the ducks back to me because I'm a bit battle-hardened. And why is that? Because such similar contempt and scorn has been poured on smokers over the years, and it was an early taste of what Leave voters were going to experience. And I think that the reason why Leavers and smokers have been treated as second-class citizens is that they have committed a common crime. That is, they won't conform to the wishes of the know-better elites. It's the know-better elites who have told us how to live our lives, and we have, in this instance, rebelled. Now, I know that many of you in the room are Remain supporters, and I know that many of you in the room actually think that we should stay in the EU. And that's absolutely legitimate and fair enough. But I would call upon you to recognise that there's something distasteful and dangerous about treating people with different political views with contempt and scorn and as though they're second-class citizens, whether they're smokers or Leavers. The defying the know-better elites for me was summed up when I would go to, and have done over the last decades, many public health events, because I was director of the Academy of Ideas. I get invited to that sort of thing, or I did before I became a Brexit Party MEP. But anyway, and I kind of listened to these people, and they'd expressed this kind of genuine anguish and total incomprehension at why, despite endless campaigns that they had in terms of regulation and prohibition, and despite spending millions of pounds on hectoring us, people still insisted on smoking. I mean, we've told them, they'd say, how bad it is for them, but they just carry on. They carry on drinking. They carry on drinking sugary drinks. They keep smoking. And now they're doing that vaping thing that looks like smoking. We can't have that. They just couldn't understand why ordinary people acted against the advice of smoking cessation officers or doctors or public health technocrats armed with fact sheets tutting at us. And I think when we meet those technocrats with their fact sheets, it's tempting to play them at their game, isn't it? They've got facts and data and stats and evidence to win arguments. And we think, well, maybe what we need to do is to throw everything into refuting those endless false facts and dodgy evidence. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we've got some great people doing that. I mean, Chris Snowden's here tonight. Where would we be without Chris Snowden? We have, at the Academy of Ideas, we have our own Rob Lyons. And obviously then there's Forrest itself, who shows up what nonsense lies behind the so-called evidence of, for example, plain packaging or the demonisation of vaping, one of the greatest ways that people should be able to use to stop smoking and so on. I like all that. I think facts and stats and evidence are hugely important. And when the accusation is levelled at me that I'm on the side of post-truth and I'm irrational or emotional because I'm a populist, I think they mean popular, you know, it can feel like what you want today is, yes, I'm cool and I'm collected and I've got PhD theses to back up these things and I'm going to debunk all the pseudoscience with real evidence. But actually, that's not how we're going to win the arguments, or certainly not alone. Because what this is really all about is about principles. It's about winning arguments, winning people over to our side, explaining to people that what this is about freedom. It's about personal autonomy. It's about self-determination. It's about individual sovereignty. Whether you're a smoker or a non-smoker, for that matter, whether you're Remain or Leave, these things are about how we view a free society. I want the right to indulge in bad habits, in a chosen lifestyle that I chose as a grown-up, free from state interference, free from the clunking weight of legislation, free from the tut-tutting of draconian technocrats. And I think more and more people in this country are reacting about being done to by technocrats. For decades they've been treated as hapless victims, condescended to, treated as though they are children who don't understand and we must talk to them like this. People are saying, no, we're grown up, we'll decide how we live. And I think we can see a rebellion erupting everywhere, and I rejoice in it. There is certainly plenty to rebel about, rebel against, and we do live in divisive times where too often we turn against each other. I mean, look, the world's gone bloody mad, right? We live in a society where today a disabled grandad, Brian Leach, was sacked by Asda for sharing a Billy Connolly sketch on Facebook, and he was reported by one of his colleagues and he lost his job. The world's gone mad. We live in a world where your next door neighbour, in the guise of looking out for women's welfare, take your argument and send the altercation to a newspaper as part of an apparently legitimate political campaign. We live in a world where teachers I know who voted Brexit, who were describing themselves as secret Brexiteers, came out in the staff room, and now there are demands by their fellow members of staff that they are disciplined and not allowed to teach. In a world in which one of the best trade union officials, Paul Embry from the Fire Brigade Union, was sacked for speaking at a Leave Means Leave rally. I don't care what side of the political divide you're on. That is not good for a free society, and we must rebel and rise against this demonisation and this attempt to divide us. So we need solidarity. We need solidarity around things that can unite us. We need solidarity around the notion that adults must be free to accept risks in lifestyle choices, whether that's playing rugby or vaping, whether it's enjoying risque comedy or dating risque politicians. We must unite around the idea that adults must be free not to conform with some imagined samey version of the perfect citizen dreamed up by a wokey clique of petty-minded public health zealots. We must unite around a pledge to diversity. Everybody believes in diversity. No, they don't. They believe in a narrow version of diversity. But I think we want diversity of opinion and we want diversity of lifestyle. We should rebel against the cloning of lifestyle correctness. So, of course, to finish, because I am the Academy of Ideas more than anything else, I have to quote J.S. Mill. J.S. Mill advocated society premised around experiments in living. And that's what I want. And that's what Forrest has always encouraged, experiments in living. J.S. Mill was a critic of custom and orthodoxy, which he saw as the enemy of human liberty and leading to mental stagnation. His whole argument was that experiments in living means that we need the freedom to choose. And to quote him, he said, "The human faculties of perception, judgment, discriminate feeling, mental activity, and even more preference are exercised only in making a choice. We need the freedom to choose to live our lives as we choose." Mill wanted to unleash in his society then the spontaneous, the creative, the unpredictable, and the unconventional forms of individuality that would mean that society transformed and was transforming. And that's what he aspired to, and that's the kind of spirit I think that we all need to aspire to today. A bit of rebellion, spontaneous, creative, unpredictable, exciting, future-orientated, not risk-averse but risk-embracing kind of society. I think we want to see a real rebellion against conformity and the tired, dull, technocratic life embodied by the nanny state. So let's celebrate real diversity. It's the 40th anniversary of Forrest, as we've heard. I've heard that 40 is the new 20. I think, therefore, that Forrest is young and experimental and the kind of young person that's not a snowflake, but one of those young people who's got a real zest for life. I have come to these events and I have met great friends here over the years and had many a fight as well, because we don't do boring at these events. But one person I've always enjoyed meeting, and she's here tonight, is Liz Barber. Now, you want to meet someone with a zest for life, go search out Liz afterwards. That woman has got more courage than any number of politicians that you'll ever meet, and she always fights for freedom. And I'd like to thank Simon and Ranald and all of the people who's helped make these events such a success, for bringing together such a wide variety of types of people and non-conformists. Simon, forever a young leader, who never conforms, and is actually the kind of person who has fought for experiments in living, which means he always puts on a good do. So can we, first of all, toast Simon, the wonderful Mr. Forrest himself, forever young. And our final toast then should be that we should take a risk. And as Jean-Paul Sartre, the great existential philosopher, said, let's live freedom. And for now, let's toast to it. Living freedom. Thank you very much, everyone.